Okay. So the first thing to know in the how of green smoothies is just what the basic recipe is. What's the formula? How do we make these green smoothies? So here it is. So simple. 1/3 greens. Greens first because that's the most important. 1/3 fruit. And 1/3 water. Now you can tell how this is like really mirrors the chimpanzee's diet because it's the water and then the half fruit and the half green. It's also going to be, so the thing about the greens is that they are, let's see, I forgot to cover. Okay, when we go back to those 4 physical reasons that we may be in a nutrient-deprived famine, either because the nutrients aren't there, because the nutrients have been killed, or because the nutrients are not being broken down or digested, or because they're not being absorbed. I want to tell you why all 4 of those things are fixed by green smoothies. So number 1, the nutrients. So the nutrients that are in greens are dramatically more than any other part of the plant. So really quickly, we're going to do a lesson here on like identification of plants. How about? So if we've got this little plant, so here's the ground, here's the stalk or whatever, with some leaves and some maybe more leaves, and then like this little flowering part that eventually grows, this is really bad, eventually grows some fruits, right? So then we can have like, this is a fruit. Okay, so here's all, oh, I forgot, and underground, of course, we have roots. Okay, this is a very generic plant. But when we look at this here, we can categorize everything in the produce section into one part of this. So down here is our roots. Let's use a different color. Our roots are going to be all of the things like beets, carrots, potatoes, onions, garlic, anything like that that's the part that grows underground. The stalk and any other part of it that's not the leaves, the fruit, or the flower is going to be just kind of, well, it's kind of vegetable category. Let's do it this way. So next is greens. This is the most important here. This is the leafy part. So this is going to be any kinds of lettuce, spinach, kale, anything with the word greens in it. Collard greens, beet greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, everything like that is greens. The flower is going to be broccoli, cauliflower, artichoke, asparagus, all of those kinds of parts. And then the fruit, besides all of our, fruits that we consider fruits like apples, oranges, pears, things like that, we also have the non-sweet fruits. So we're going to write non-sweet because this is what people call vegetables also. Non-sweet fruits. These are going to be cucumbers. Basically, if it has seeds, it's a fruit. So squash, avocado, tomatoes, all kinds of peppers, all these things you actually thought were, even zucchini, all these things you thought were vegetables really are non-sweet fruits. So here's why this matters. When we're trying to decide what to put in our green smoothie, and we think that a lot of these non-sweet fruits that are greens are actually not fully ripe. So a green pepper is just a non-ripe red pepper. Really almost anything that's green, even green apples and things like that, are just actually not fully ripe. So the reason all this matters is that the greens are where, this is where the chlorophyll is stored, which is huge, and this is where most of the nutrients are stored. So if you compare beet roots, the actual beet, to the beet greens, there's something like 10 times as much calcium and 100 and something times as much vitamin, I can't remember. But the greens always have, 10 to hundreds of times more of the vitamins and nutrients and minerals and things that our body needs. So it's not that any of these other things aren't good for us. It's just that we're going to get, if we're starving for nutrients and we can add in greens every day, we're going to get a dramatic increase in the amount of vitamins and nutrients that we're taking into our bodies. And this is especially useful when the farming techniques and all these other things we're doing are killing the nutrients in our food. So this takes care of the issue of nutrients not being present, because we're getting this super dose of nutrients from our grains. Second, they won't be killed because they're not cooked. And third, digested. If you blend something up, you're so much more likely to digest it because your body doesn't have to do as much of the breaking down. None of us chew as much as we're supposed to anymore. And like I said, our stomachs don't have the ability to break things down like they used to. And so the blender is going to do that for you. And then the absorb, when it is broken down like a blender would do, especially a high-speed blender, it's going to do a huge better job. Is going to make it way easier to absorb, and we're not eating it with salad dressing or oils or other things that are going to interfere with that absorption. So absorption is huge. So green smoothies really take care of all four of these just in this really fantastic way. But like I said, when you're making your green smoothies, remember what greens really are. And something like iceberg lettuce has very little nutrients in it. It's still a green, but it's not going to give you the dramatic effect that the darker greens are going to do. So you want to stick with darker ones, and you want to rotate. You want a big variety of greens because you're going to get more of a variety of nutrients from more different kinds of plants. And if you can get them organic, of course, that's going to give you more. So here is just going to be the basic, we'll come back to that, but what to buy. Okay, so I said I was going to make this really easy, right? So the what to buy, this is what I want you to do when you're getting started, because I want it to be easy. I want you just to get into the habit. And then once you're good at these, you can start just going nuts. Just go to the grocery store and buy whatever greens look interesting and just experiment and try and this kind of thing. But here's what I'm going to show you first is if you have a Costco membership, it's really easy to just go to Costco and buy these big things and store them, and then you're ready to go. Or you can copy the same thing at any grocery store. So here's what I buy. I go to Costco. I buy this giant tub of baby spinach. So this is 1 pound, and I use half of it in each blenderful that I make. That makes almost 3 quarts. So spinach. They also have a spring mix. So I'll use that some days. And they have these bags of organic baby kale. So all 3 of these come not frozen, but I stick them in the freezer when I get home because these things tend to get slimy after just a couple days. So if you're not going to use it in a day or 2, then stick it in the freezer. So what I do is I buy just tons of these and I just stick them all in my freezer so that I know I always have this backup of greens to use and a little bit of a variety. You can also use romaine lettuce. It's going to have more, you'll be surprised, it has a more bitter kind of flavor in smoothies. It's great in salads, you don't really notice that so much, but so I only use this if I'm if I have bought so much romaine that I'm not going to use for salads that I just need to use it up in a smoothie. But usually I don't put those in them. And you can use lots bigger variety, but I'm just trying to show you what you can do to just get started. So even, if they're bagged spinach, bagged spring mix or baby greens or whatever, just grab those because they're pre-washed. Washing spinach is kind of a big ordeal. It has tons of sand and stuff on it, and you have to let it all settle in the sink. It kind of takes big, I just want you to get in the habit. I want this to be easy, simple for you. So buy the bag stuff to start, and just let's start with that. And then again, the fruit. This is my favorite, which is why it's almost gone, is this organic antioxidant blend, but it's just a mix of berries and all these different yummy berries and cherries and stuff. And then there's this frozen. This one has mango, papaya, strawberries, pineapple. I'll also buy big things of frozen blueberries, big things of frozen strawberries, any kind of mixes of frozen fruits like that to just keep in your freezer so you always know you have the ingredients you need for a green smoothie. And then I buy tons and tons of bananas. I don't think you can see in the corner, but I have a big pile of bananas over there. I always just buy as many bananas as I, can fit in my cart. And anytime they have ripe bananas that are at discount, I buy those because you want to let your bananas get really, spotty with brown spots, because you want them about as ripe as you can get them without them getting bad, to get that like maximum ripeness, maximum sweet that you'll add into your smoothies. And then you'll just peel them and you can break them up into a Ziploc bag and freeze them. And then you can just pop them into your smoothies. So that is what to buy. Super simple, keep it easy, stick the stuff in the freezer until you really get a feel for how fast you use stuff. And then I would still keep a backup in the freezer of the ingredients, and then whenever you run out of the fresh stuff or whatever, then you can use that. Also, if you've bought some kale and some collards and some chard and some other greens for soups or for salads or things that you wanted to eat, and you can tell you're not going to eat them before they'll go bad, just rinse them off and put them in a Ziploc bag and freeze them for your smoothies. And the same thing with fruit. If you get a whole case of oranges and you're not going to use them in time, just peel them and freeze them. Or of apples, just cut them and freeze them. And you can throw, if you have a high-speed blender, you can throw the seeds and everything in the blender, so you can just just cut it into smaller sections so it's easy to blend. Any fruit that you get, you can just freeze it on like cookie sheets, like any berries or anything. Like I have a lot of people ask me, food, this kind of food is so expensive. How do I, afford this? Well, if you buy things when they're in season and then store them in your freezer, that's going to be a good way to save a lot of money. You probably have neighbors with fruit trees, and they're probably happy for you to pick a bunch of their apricots or whatever they have, their pears, and then you can, cut and freeze them for your smoothies. Make sure to wash them. And then same thing with greens. Like you can grow your own greens in your garden for really cheap, and like chard will grow. It'll grow through frost, like it won't kill it. So you can get a really good like crop of greens and freeze them if you need the help affording it, and it's just gonna be a really fun way to do it. But remember, very most important is just that we're developing the habit. So if you remember the 4 things we talked about that keep people in the habit, the number 1 was the understanding why. Number 2 was to make it yummy. So when we talk about yummy, I don't know why, but I want to do yummy in pink. You're just not going to stick with something that feels like torture. Just won't stick with it long. So it's good to have other people doing this with you and motivating you and stuff, but if you can get just some ways to make it enjoyable for you, it's gonna stick more likely. So one way to make it yummy is just to start out adding more fruit. I know my basic formula said, that it's a third fruit, a third water, a third greens, but add some more fruit. Whatever you, it's not like more fruit's gonna hurt you. Add more fruit in it to make it sweeter and to make it yummier. And if you're trying to get your kids into this habit, that's gonna help too. The second thing is to add sweet fruits. So every smoothie I make is always going to contain at least one of these fruits. So sweet fruits. These are just from my experience what I found. Bananas, like I said, the super ripe bananas. Grapes are really sweet. Some varieties of apples, so like the Gala, the Fuji, the Red Delicious, whatever are the super sweet apples. So obviously not the green apples. The pineapple is going to be really sweet if it's ripe. Kind of a cheat that I tell people to use, especially when they're starting, is orange juice concentrate. And oranges are pretty sweet too. It's harder to tell if an orange is going to be really sweet or not. But you can do oranges and then put some orange juice concentrate in with it. Some others. Oh, blueberries are actually really sweet in smoothies. So what I'll do is I don't know if I ever do a smoothie without at least one of those in it, because those I know are going to make it good. And then I'll add other fruits too. And then the other thing you want to do is start with really mild greens. So there's kind of this range of bitterness for greens. And I think the truth is that the greens that are the highest in nutrients are probably the most bitter. I don't think that's like exactly true, but I think it's pretty close. What happens is when you start drinking smoothies, you're going to want these mild greens. Spinach is super mild. Kale is super mild. Chard, collards, those are all really mild in flavor. The ones that are going to be stronger, more bitter, are going to be the dandelion greens, the beet greens are pretty mild. The mustard greens, the turnip greens, the arugula, those are going to be more strong flavored and bitter. The mustard greens even have like this peppery kind of flavor to them. So start with just mild. Here, I'll write these ones down for you. Spinach, kale, collards, and chard. And I think beet is pretty mild too. So those greens are going to be really mild. So start just with those. And then you can start adding in, really to do a smoothie with just dandelion greens. I tried this once, maybe you've seen the video. It was a super bitter smoothie, even with lots of bananas and stuff. And really, like, you might get to the point where you just love that bitter and that like a dandelion smoothie is your favorite. But it's really strong. So you're going to want to start with mild, and then you can do, as you start getting in the habit of it, do these mild greens and then add in just a little handful of these other ones to get those nutrients, but not have the whole smoothie be super bitter. So the last thing, actually I have 2 more points. So the fourth thing you can do to make them really yummy is add a sweetener. There's nothing wrong with this. Like if you just want to make sure that your kids are eating it, or that, I can't spell while I'm talking, or that you're getting in the habit of it. I mean, like I said, most important is that you're getting in the habit of it. Add some honey, add some agave, add some coconut sugar, some natural sweetener. And yeah, I mean, if you ate these things on their own, they're going to spike your blood sugar. But the magic thing that happens with fruits, like fruits have a really high concentration of fructose in them, really high concentration of sugar. And if you just drank the juice of them, it would spike your blood sugar. But since the fruit has the cellulose in it, it slows the absorption of the sugars into your body, so you're not absorbing as much sugar at all, and it's not making your blood sugar spike because it makes it a gradual absorption. So adding the sweeteners is going to be the same thing. You have so much fiber in these smoothies that adding some sweetener is not going to hurt. So like I said, the natural sweeteners are going to be the best. The agave, the honey, the pure maple syrup, or organic, what's it called, coconut sugar. And then the last point, and this is pretty big, is a high-speed blender. I don't know if you can read this far down, but a high-speed blender is going to make the texture so much better. I have known a lot of people who have kept up with a green smoothie daily habit with a regular blender, but there's a big difference, and you'll know this if you've tried it, between a smoothie made with a regular blender or a high-speed blender. And the only high-speed blenders I know of are Vitamix and Blendtec. And they are so much, they're just not even the same. Like, they shouldn't even be called blenders because they're just a totally different tool. But they chop this up so small that there are no green pieces. You don't see any green flecks in your smoothie. And so you're not chewing it. It's just like, literally, it's just like liquefied. And it makes it yummier, and it makes it so that you're absorbing so much more of the grains because it is breaking down so much more of it for you. So the high-speed blender is a really big deal. So that is how we make them yummy. The next was to make them easy. Now, all along, everything I've been showing you has been to make it easy, right? These, buying the spinach in the tubs, all of that kind of stuff, so that it's easy. Another thing is, like I said, keeping them frozen so you always have them on hand. So I'm going to say pre-washed. You either do it yourself or do it, or buy them pre-washed and then store them in the freezer. You don't have to store everything in the freezer, but just anything that you're not sure if you're going to use it in time. And then the next one is, I know a lot of people who are like, seriously, I don't even have 5 minutes in the morning to make a smoothie. I don't know what they're already eating for breakfast, but if you don't have 5 minutes in the morning to make a smoothie, put the stuff in the blender the night before. Just load in the liquids first, and then the non-frozen ingredients, and then the frozen, and then blend it up the next morning. So load blender the night before. I've done this a couple times when I knew I'd be running out the door in the morning. Another thing you can do is actually you can blend your smoothie and store it for up to 48 hours. So if that's going to help you, go ahead and do that. Store 48 hours is the max you want to do. It's not that it'll really get bad after that, it's just not going to taste as good. So hopefully those will help you make it really easy. And the truth is, for me, one of the reasons I do this every day for my family is because it's easier than making oatmeal. It's faster, it's easier than making almost anything else other than cold cereal, which is really garbage. So the ease of green smoothies is one of the huge things that keeps people doing it. The fact that it's yummy keeps them doing it. So the last thing that we had was the follow the rules. So this is really important because I know a lot of people who started with a green smoothie habit who didn't quite get like all of these rules in their head, and they started doing something different with it, and then they stopped getting the results. The results just weren't as powerful for them, and so they stopped drinking the green smoothies every day. So these are going to be, this is our green smoothie rules. I don't know if rules doesn't sound fun, but this is what's going to get you the results that are going to be very powerfully motivating. So number one is that you stick with the formula and you add nothing else. Now, again, the most important thing is developing the habit. So if you have to add other stuff to your smoothies to get in the habit, then I just want you drinking them every day. But if your smoothies have only the greens and the fruit and the liquid, which could be juice if it needs to be, but water I usually say, if that's all it has, then you're going to absorb so much more of the nutrients from the greens. You're going to notice the energy, like right after, like seriously 10 minutes after, you're going to notice that increase in energy. If you start adding things like yogurt, nuts, seeds, protein powders, even oats I've heard of, if you start adding other things in like that, the greens aren't going to absorb as fast. You're just going to not notice that dramatic results that you normally notice. Two things happen. So like when I was drawing the stomach and the intestines before, what happens in the stomach is different types of foods require a different pH to absorb them, or to break them down. And so if you have something else in your stomach at the same time as the greens and the fruits, the pH may change to something that's less ideal for breaking down your greens and your fruits. In your intestine, what happens is if you have other things like oils and different kind of things fighting for that absorption area, that surface area to be absorbed, not as much of the greens are going to get absorbed. And the whole point of all of this is to get the maximum absorption of those greens that you're putting in your bodies. So I tell people just don't add anything else. It's just not worth it. Number two is to not eat anything else 40 minutes. So this is the 40-minute rule. 40 minutes before and after. Okay, that B should be capitalized if the after is, huh? So 40 minutes before and after we drink our green smoothie, we don't eat anything else. Not even a cracker, not even one little other thing. Again, it's going to do the same thing as here. It's going to change the pH. We're not going to digest it as well, and it's going to interfere with the absorption. We're not going to absorb as much of it, and we're not going to absorb it as fast. Another thing that happens is the fruits in the smoothies, if you know anything about food combining, fruits tend to ferment if they are slowed down, if they're sitting on top of heavy foods. So if we eat this big dinner of meat and potatoes and then we eat some strawberries afterwards, those strawberries sit on top and they just kind of sit in the gut waiting for that slower meat and potatoes to move through, and fruit ferments as it ages in our stomach. And that fermenting causes gas and indigestion and kind of some of those discomforts. So that's another reason that you don't want anything 40 minutes before and after, is that you want the fruits and the greens to get through as quickly as possible. You want them to absorb as much of it as possible and as quickly as possible. And then the only other thing is to aim for 1 quart of green smoothie. So some people get in the habit of drinking a green smoothie, but maybe they aren't doing, maybe they're just like, well, honestly, what I did for a long time was I would make 1 blender full, and I started having more and more kids, and by the time I had 6 kids, I was kind of getting half a quart a day because I was giving so much of it to them. So I had to figure out how to make more every day so that I was getting my full quart a day, because that's when you're going to notice, that's kind of the magic number of when you're going to notice the most improvement. And obviously, if you tend to be a bigger person and eat a lot more, drink more than a quart. If you're tiny and don't drink much, have less. But these rules are really what are going to get you the most dramatic results and are going to keep you doing your green smoothies every single day. So follow these and you'll be happy with your results. The last thing I want to talk about is what time of day. A lot of people ask, does it matter what time of day I eat this? Does it matter if it's before or after I exercise? And really, none of that really matters. What you really want is to get good at listening to your body and feeling what feels right to you. But I do recommend that you start by doing these in the mornings. So I'm going to add that here. Not that it's a really strong rule, but this is my suggestion, is mornings. And it's for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you do it in the morning and it's the first thing you eat, then you don't need to worry about that 40 minutes before. Because if you eat breakfast and then you're waiting around for 40 minutes to drink your smoothie, it's going to make your day harder. You might be late to work. You probably just won't get your smoothie in. So it's a lot more likely to happen. If you do it first thing in the morning, then you haven't eaten anything before. You won't be hungry for 40 minutes after that anyway. You could fix something else to take with you to work or whatever. But that mornings takes care of the before and after, takes care of the getting it done. And this other really interesting thing is that greens are the only food that helps digest other foods, because they stimulate the release of digestive enzymes in our body. So to me, this is a perfect way to start our day. If I start my day with a green smoothie, then I've got these digestive enzymes being stimulated in my body to help break down and digest everything else I eat all day. So that's why I really like mornings for green smoothies. So the only thing we have left here now is to show you how to actually make a green smoothie. So that's what we're going to do now. So now I'm going to show you how to make a green smoothie. This is just a basic one. It contains one of the ingredients that is the super sweet fruit that I always add one of. So today I'm doing blueberries. You could also add orange juice concentrate to this recipe. And I'm just doing spinach this time, which is just probably the most mild of the greens. So with your blender, you usually want to start with the liquid ingredients first, and then the other ones next, and then frozen on top. But when I freeze my greens, I put those in first. If I put the greens in first, then I can add the water on top of it, and it helps to pack them down. So I'm going to add half of this. This is a pound of spinach, and I'm going to add half of it into the blender because it does condense down a lot. And when I say 1/3 greens, 1/3 fruit, 1/3 water, that greens is the volume of it. It's kind of like what it would be blended. So you really do want to pack a lot in. If you're just starting, start with less, and then wait till you just get used to that greens flavor. But you really can get half a pound. Yeah. So you really can get half a pound of these greens in, and it's not going to taste very strong, especially if you have a high-speed blender that's really going to get that texture out of it for you. So that's probably half. That might be more than half. So next I'll get the water. when you're first starting, you can follow recipes to make sure you're getting just the right amount of water and everything else. But I kind of just do it by, I just kind of know where the water needs to go up to and different things just from doing it a lot. But it may be helpful to start with a recipe. So this is just going to do this berry mix and then blueberries. Some berries tend to be really tangy and some are sweeter. The blueberries tend to be really sweet. So those will be the super sweet fruit to ensure that it's good. And since this has frozen fruit in it, I don't need to add any ice. I might be packing this too high. We'll see. I might take out some of those. Yeah. So I normally have used my Vitamix blender. I actually just got this Blend Tech, and I've been wanting to try it out, so I'm not as used to this one. The Vitamix I pack really, really full. We'll see how full this will go. And you want to blend it long enough to make sure that the greens really get broken up. So if you don't have a high-speed blender, it may take a lot longer, and ice is going to help, or something frozen is going to help to kind of emulsify those greens. But a high-speed blender, you still want to make sure you go long enough that you can see that that green is now kind of just a liquid and it doesn't have any of the chunks in it. So this isn't the prettiest color of smoothie. It's kind of a more brown one. Some people prefer this to the green. I think the green's pretty. And you can also get some nice purple colors and things if you do some, like if I did more blueberries or if I did some other bright colored berries and things. But when you're starting, the color tends to matter more to kids. But the taste is good enough that they'll end up liking it. My kids ask for these all the time. So there it is. We'll try it. There's my kid asking for some. So thank you so much for watching. Once again, this is Liz Falp, the Green Smoothie Goddess, reminding you to be sexy, be powerful, and be productive today.